as fuck. I mean, like,
Okay. Okay. All right, let's do this. I'm ready when you are.
I've been ready for my life.
Welcome to the Purdue Basketball Beat. I'm Michael with Anish and Andy, and we don't have a guest this week, so you can go ahead and turn us off if you want to.
That's true. Very true.
Very fair. Just trying to be fair. So today we're going to talk about the front court, but first, before we get into that, some very sad news for those fans of the Big Ten and the NBA. Flip Saunders passed away earlier this week. It seemed like a couple weeks ago he was maybe going to be heading back. Things looked optimistic, and then, like, seriously, 5 days ago it was like Flip's not doing so great, and then he just passed really quickly. So that is a very sad
Yeah,
moment for basketball
super
fans.
sad. So the reason I wanted to touch on this was he played on the 76-77 Golden Gophers. He was their starting point guard, and that team featured four NBA players who would play for more than a decade, two of which would be fairly legendary. Kevin McHale, Michael Thompson, Ray Williams, and Osborne Lockhart, which is a fantastic name.
Great name.
But the fifth player on that team was Flip Saunders, um, and he made with three first round draft picks, he was voted the most valuable player, pretty unanimously by that team. He didn't get a shot in the NBA. He was like 5'10", not really athletic. But then he went to coaching and team building, and I think there was a stat somewhere that every player on the current Minnesota Timberwolves roster, which until this summer included our very own Robbie Hummel, was drafted or signed or traded for by Flip Saunders in his 2 years. And he was, I mean, like, really, Flip is the reason that Robbie had his cup of coffee in the NBA.
Yep.
I think the coach was still Rick Adelman when Robbie was drafted, but Flip drafted him probably because he's a Big Ten guy and like the come from behind story type thing. Um, and when like last summer when the coaching change happened and Flip Saunders came down into the booth, they thought, or like onto the sidelines to coach the team, they thought that Robbie wasn't going to even make the team. They thought that Shabazz Muhammad was going to start taking over and all this. And all of a sudden, Robbie is like playing point guard for the like starting at point guard when Ricky Rubio was out. So he literally has played 1 through the 5 for Flip Saunders, and I mean, like, for huge growth in the NBA under Flip Saunders, like Robbie has, and now he's playing overseas. But this guy, right, Flip Saunders, has had such a huge impact, and it's very sad. Very sad. Cancer is the worst.
Yeah, that was a heck of a way for us to start off the
That's
podcast.
true. Very true. Andy, joke.
All right, this is good. Good energy. I like where we're at right now. Let's talk Purdue now. Great.
So, well, from a very sad topic, we'll move on to Purdue and some news that just broke today, out of Bleacher Report of all places, that Caleb Swanigan is not officially cleared to play yet, and that is due to the fact that his adopted father is an agent, advisor, whatever, for a sports agency, a professional sports agency. So we'll see how that goes, but that's definitely something that Purdue is not used to happening.
I think this doesn't surprise me at all, to be completely honest. I mean, I think they have to do their due diligence because it doesn't look good. I mean, when you're hearing about this, you know it doesn't look good. We've been defending it for a while. We know the details of his upbringing, so it's easy, I think, from when you know that, to know that it's the intentions are genuine. But
I think it's completely reasonable. I
yeah,
mean, on its face, it makes sense. A high-profile alum turned agent who just happens to be the adopted father of a kid who's a top 10 player going to a school that has not had a player ranked that high since Glenn Robinson back in the mid to early 90s. So I think it makes sense, but there's no there. It should happen very fast. But this is the NCAA, so we'll have to wait and see what happens.
That's 2 weeks before the start of the season.
I know. See, this should have happened, yeah. If you've got a gripe with this...
This should have happened in May? In June? Does the NCAA not have enough employees? I'll go work for the NCAA if they'll pay me a paycheck. Like, I see what you guys are saying, that it does, you have to do your due diligence, just like the Scala Bissier thing, just like the Check Diallo thing at Kansas.
Yep.
But to be still resolving things in almost November for college basketball is insane.
As soon as he signed the paperwork, it should have kicked off a process. They should have looked into it. It should have been over with. So, I mean, I think that is the legitimate gripe here.
I don't get it, and we hadn't heard of, so I'd been kind of keeping track of the Scala Bissier and the Check Diallo cases because they're both top 5 players in the country and possible lottery picks and high lottery picks, and there were footnotes that Jeff Goodman and Gary Parrish, all them would leave, that was these aren't the only players that are going through something like this, that are going through this approval process. So it's not unique, but it's only these kind of cases that they need to start looking at, or that they need to still be looking at. But again, it's November. I don't understand, but whatever.
It's my favorite, and probably the only comment that you can really make about this is from Barnes himself in that Bleacher Report article from a couple weeks ago, where he basically said that, the only thing freakish about Caleb when I adopted him was his ability to eat, and then if I was trying to recruit the next hot dog eating champion, then that would be a legitimate gripe.
That story, by the way, was incredible. So the guy that broke the story, I think John King, was the one who wrote this story, and it was fantastic. If you haven't got Jason King,
you would, because I first saw it on Bleacher Report. I'm like I thought it'd be some sort of clickbait or some 2-paragraph with no facts, and I think the write-up of his eligibility was just as good as the write-up of what on Swanigan itself.
Well, just like Deadspin, Deadspin too, but just like Bleacher Report and all these other BuzzFeed, they use these clickbait sites to actually pay big-name writers and get them to actually put good content on their pages. So Jason King is a legitimately very, very good writer. And the story he did on Swanigan, I was surprised that the guys at GBI didn't do something like that already, but I mean it was unreal. I'd definitely go recommend reading that. It made it sound like because of an abuse, parental abuse, spousal abuse, they kept moving between Indianapolis and Utah. It just so happened that one of his uncles was friends with, from the Terre Haute area, and so was friends with Roosevelt Barnes, and let him know, and they met. They met Caleb, and the rest is kind of history, I guess. But incredible story. Caleb's the best. I'm so glad we have him.
So that sort of leads to our discussion with the Frontcourt, which is clearly the most high-profile and best unit that Purdue has. I mean, we've got Vince, Edwards, Smotherman, Taylor, Swanigan, Haas, and Hammonds, and you can look at those guys and say, I don't know, what do you think? How many NBA players are there? I'm gonna go with, man, I don't know, maybe even 4. I bet Edwards gets a cup of coffee in the NBA, or at least he'll get a shot.
I think it's 4 pretty easily, and I think the borderline one is Isaac Haas. I think Vince Edwards, and Vince Edwards jokes aside, I think Vince makes it pretty comfortably into the NBA.
For those who can't see, we're watching Anisha on webcam. Every time he says Vince's name, he sweats a little bit, just a little bit.
I have a fan going.
He gets a little flush, giggles a little bit.
I think that there are three surefire NBA candidates or NBA players in Biggie, AJ, and Vince, and then we'll see Isaac. I'm sure he's going to get a camp invite at the very least. But
I'll call Edwards a sure thing. I mean, things sound pretty good, but you got to see it.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
If he shows it this season, then I'll agree with you. But Haas, 7-2, right? Like, he's going to get a look at least.
The only thing is that sometimes the trainers forget to pack his hands and feet. And so, for long road games, those hands and those feet are very hard to lug. So he just detaches them from his body, and then he doesn't have them for stretches of gameplay at a time. So that's a difficulty Purdue's going to have to overcome.
So the guy that I thought when he was being recruited as a borderline NBA player, like dark horse, was Smotherman.
Yeah, I agree. Actually,
because he's got height, he's got ball handling. He was a point guard early on in high school, and he's Purdue's best athlete. Yeah. But he is sort of the odd man out this season, and it'll be interesting to see where he fits in, if he fits in at all.
I think we'll come back on that on the redshirt discussion, but it's sad. I really liked Smotherman when he came here, and when we were having those two down years. I thought that him and Davis actually showed very similar upside. So maybe next year he could step in right away. But back to Swanigan. Let's just start with the guy, right? I mean, we haven't had a player like this in West Lafayette in I don't know how many years. Like this anticipated his arrival on campus, and I think it's a perfect position for him. Even better than Cal. Cal's got two potential top 5 NBA picks, but I don't think that there's much pressure on Swanigan to produce right away in terms of carrying his team, and I don't think Swanigan's the kind of player that does that. I think he's like an elite role player, if that makes sense. I don't think he's the focal point, but he's the key glue guy.
So do you think? I mean, in order for Purdue to take the next step or to advance further than the first or second round in the NCAA tournament, can they do that with him as an elite role player, as you say, or does he need to be that go-to guy? I think one of the things that has hurt these recent Purdue teams has been the lack of an alpha on the court who you can just sort of give the ball to and say, I need some points. Is he going to be that guy, or is that asking too much even out of a top 10 recruit?
I mean, in my opinion, I don't think he needs to be, as dominant offensively from a points perspective. I think he just needs to be able to play smart. If he's playing that 4, kind of where Robbie Hummel played, he's going to need to be able to pass the ball, hit the open shot, but be a facilitator more than anything else. And I think the points will come to him. I think he'll get, the rebounds, and I think if he mans the elbow, for a zone, that's usually a weak spot. And if we're going to get zoned a lot, then that would be pretty clutch. But with as many talented players or around him, I don't think he has to be the man. I think he just needs to be a solid contributor and a smart player.
And I think that in terms of the vocal leader, it's going to be Edwards and Ray Davis. I think those two are clearly the most vocal people on this roster. I don't think they shut up, in fact. And from the point of view of the guy that you go to down the stretch if you need 2 points, I think that's going to be AJ. I really do think AJ is going to be have an incredible year. But for Swanigan, it is that kind of do everything position. And offensively, I really think he can. I was just rereading, because the NBA season is starting this week, and I am incredibly pumped. I was just reading Zach Lowe's thing from last year, Grantland writer, who was talking about just holding off on the whole talk of the death of the post game. And while it's true that in the NBA you're not seeing people like Patrick Ewing or Shaq backing down for 10 seconds of the shot clock, there's no secondary motion. It's just these dominant big men. You have post action that's getting people on the perimeter open, right? So you have people moving on the perimeter. The ball is inside. Maybe you have to send a double if there's someone like Draymond Green or someone like Marc Gasol, both of them who are elite passers. And that's what Zach Lowe was like emphasizing, is that he thinks that the next elite skill is going to be, instead of the stretch four, it's going to be called the playmaking four, where it's post passing is going to be the most important aspect of that playmaking four's abilities. And I think that's exactly where Caleb Swanigan's strengths are. Like, I think he's a brilliant passer. Watching some of the video that GBI posted, in addition to all of his high school and summer league type games, I think that's where his strength is. So I really do think that offensively, Swanigan's going to be incredible, and we're not going to need to force feed him the ball.
Yeah, that's fair, and I think that's a talent that Vince Edwards showed can be integral to success, right? He set the record for most assists in a season by a non-guard last year as a freshman, and he's got great.
That's a nice stat. That was a really nice stat.
I pull them out every once in a while off the top of my head. Like a steel trap up here.
So the thing that Swanigan has, obviously, and with his weight loss, maybe this isn't quite as obvious, but the post game. I mean, like, just being able to bully people in the post. I don't think Edwards had that last year. Maybe after he's beefed up a little bit, what did he gain? Well, it's the requisite 15 pounds of muscle that he gained over the summer. But I think Swanigan, even with the weight loss, I think he's going to be fairly unstoppable against college bigs in the post. Like, if he wants a bucket, he's going to get it.
Well, I think all freshmen, especially big men, struggle at some point to adjust to the college game, even elite big men, because guys are Swanigan has a little bit of an advantage because he does go against some pretty big dudes in practice, but for the most part, in game situations, he's not going to be able to be the same bully that he was in high school, at least not at first. But he has all these other skills that are very helpful. His passing, he can shoot it a little bit. You can run the offense through him without him slowing things down to score. So I think at some point he will reach a freshman wall of sorts, from a scoring standpoint or from an ability just to do whatever he wants standpoint. And it's going to be stuff like passing that smooths some of those bumps a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know. I'm really excited, and I think even if he hits the wall, I mean, the depth in the front court that we have is incredible. And everybody keeps talking about, well, Caleb at the 5, Caleb at the 5. But just send him to the bench. We don't need Caleb to play 35 minutes a game. We can keep him fresh for that middle stretch of the game. Slide Vince to the 4 and have AJ play or have Haas play. Like, have the 4 perimeter guys and Haas, or all 4 perimeter guys and AJ. I really do think that can work outside of crunch time, and maybe that will be a way to work past some of the freshman wall things, because even last year, Vince was a massive contributor. Other freshmen, PJ Thompson hit a wall. Vince pretty clearly hit a wall halfway through Big Ten season his freshman year. Who else? There was Matthias. Matthias completely disappeared down the stretch in Big Ten play. So you're right. The freshman wall's pretty inevitable, but I really do think we have the horses to get through. And for an NBA comparison for Swanigan, and actually I was thinking about this over the weekend while watching those clips that GBI posted. Most people gravitate to Zebo, another Zach Randolph, another Indianapolis guy who was about to go to Michigan State, a bruiser, kind of overweight, a little bit old school post game. the modern day version of Zebo is now Draymond Green, and that's the key point. But I don't think Caleb is as strong in the post as Zebo, just because Zebo's a freak, and I don't think he's as good defensively, anywhere nearly as good defensively as Draymond Green was. Boris Diaw was actually the comparison that I was thinking. He's slow, but his fundamentals are so good. He's probably the most skilled player, like purely the most skilled player on the San Antonio Spurs. Um, Now, where I don't think it fits is the motivational problems and everything like that, because I don't think Biggie's going to have. I think Biggie's shown that he doesn't have too many motivational problems. But I think just in terms of style of play, a not fat Boris Diaw might be pretty close, and that is a really good player.
I think that's a good comparison. But yeah, and hopefully, if Swanigan can have that sort of impact, the sort of glue, the guy that does everything to make things go.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
a little
maybe
bit
not
more
right
effort
away.
on defense.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't even have to be right. It not doesn't even. It's not going to be right away. I think he's clearly a 2-year player. I think that was both his and Rose Barnes' plan for coming to Purdue. So I don't know. I am excited just to see what he can do and how he can add. I think he's a perfect fit.
You know, it's. I've always thought he was a 2-year player, and I thought during the transition would be kind of rough. But after seeing him in 2 scrimmages, I mean, part of me is a little nervous. I mean, he seems to be clicking pretty well. He's
Hmm.
showing great, vision, and it looks like what surprises me, and it could be just a scrimmage, but it looks like they're really looking to get him the ball. And if he puts up numbers anywhere close to what he was putting up in the scrimmage, I mean, there is a fear that there's at least a case for him to leave early after 1 year.
There's no downside to that.
No, absolutely not.
So there are more front court players than just Caleb Swanigan. One interesting one is we briefly touched on him, Smotherman,
Yeah.
who is kind of getting floated around a little bit that maybe he could take a redshirt year, which is interesting because I don't know how he gets more than 10 minutes a game currently, as things are currently constructed. But he's an energy guy. He brings value to the team. He's won games for Purdue before with that energy. So, in his athleticism, he can shoot it a little bit. Apparently, he's been working on that. And what do you think? Should he redshirt, or should Painter redshirt him? I guess those are 2 different questions.
Go ahead, Andy.
I personally, and this is my whole take on the redshirt issue altogether, is I think we should have all hands on deck. Just looking at his performance in the scrimmages, he's been working on his shot. It looks like it's coming along pretty well, and his athleticism is next to none. I mean, he brings, even if he brought 5 to 10 minutes into the game, he brings an energy that no one else can, and he could do things that no one else can. And he did, he didn't play a whole lot last year, but he'd have those moments that he won was it the Iowa game?
Yeah.
Took over that. And I think he could probably have a similar role. I don't think we'll need him, every game. I don't think he'll play more than 10 minutes a game, but I think that he's someone good that, could spark off the bench.
I think so. When I was doing some of the minutes breakdowns, there are 200 minutes in a game that you have to split up between 5 players on the court, right? And between the starting lineup of what I think the starting lineup is going to be is PJ Davis, Edwards, Swanigan, and Hammonds, plus off the bench Johnny Hill, Matthias, Stevens, and Haas. We have 9 players who are all going to clearly get double-digit minutes. Do you agree?
Probably.
So that, for me, I thought Hammonds would play over 30 minutes, and that's it. Keep Swanigan and Edwards at 25, and Stevens Matthias 21, stuff like that. Smotherman ends up with 7 minutes. There's 7 minutes left over for him, and I did not include Ryan Klein, I didn't include Grant Weatherford, and I didn't include Jaquil Taylor. And these are all 3 players that could take minutes. I think the need is greater in the backcourt. And the need is greater at shooter. If Matthias, I know I heard great things. I am the Matthias skeptic, right? So I heard great things at the scrimmage, but um, these continued like sinus infections. He had a surgery over the summer to try and fix them. If Matthias can't play, it looks like Ryan Klein is ready to go. And I wasn't the biggest fan of that, but if he's ready to go, then you suit him up, and because we need floor spacers around those behemoths inside, right?
Yeah.
So that eats into Smotherman's minutes. Like no, Edwards, Swanigan, Hammonds, Davis, Matthias, or I mean Haas, they aren't losing minutes. The one that is going to lose the minutes if we need an extra shooter is going to be Smotherman. So my case for him is that he grows into like the successor of the basketball successor to Davis. Um, they're fairly perfect analogs. Davis is a little better offensively, but Smotherman is light years ahead of Davis in terms of athleticism. And next year we'll need a stopper. There are some people that are worried that Smotherman is taking this so that he can graduate early and go somewhere else. I don't buy that. Why would he want to go somewhere else when this team is poised to be at least a top 30 team for his 3 years?
I don't think that's. I think. I mean, it's a theory, but I don't think that's.
So
There's no
yeah.
indications that that's actually what's going on. I think Smotherman thinks. If I'm gonna guess what he thinks and be wrong, if I'm him, I say I think I'm talented. I think I've got athleticism. I think I've added to my shooting game. I think I can contribute, but I'm not going to contribute over Swanigan, Edwards, Haas, and Hammonds. So if I want to really showcase my skills and not waste a year getting 8 minutes a game, then it's better for me to let some of that attrition happen and then come back the next year in a more prominent role.
I think I'd agree, and that's I kind of was spitballing like the idea of him redshirting in the spring, like right after the season ended, but I didn't know how feasible that would be. It was just kind of a, hey, wouldn't this be cool if that happened? We got another year out of an athletic freak like Smotherman, a guy who I've always been a fan of. But I didn't think it actually happened. Apparently, he came and volunteered that idea to Coach Painter, which is very, very weird. That you have two voluntary red shirts in Ryan Klein and Basil Smotherman. So that's weird. And I think we do have a greater need for Klein than Smotherman. And Klein is way further along than I thought he would be. I mean, again, the Klein and Matthias skeptic is the part that I play. I'm not sold on Matthias even as a point guard yet, but Klein, I don't know, man. He could be not bad.
Well, so I mean, we pretty well understand where Smotherman's at, and we talked a lot about Swanigan. I'll skip Taylor. I don't think he's going to have much of a role. I don't think that's a very controversial thing to say.
How dare you?
But Edwards, just a couple minutes, Anish, just a couple.
I'm sorry, who are you talking about?
What does Vince Edwards need to improve upon other than more timely responses to Anish's late night texts?
Nothing. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect in every way. He's got a great. He used to have the blonde highlights on his faux hawk. Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I think he should bring it back. I don't know if he has it now. I've seen like videos that have alternated whether he has it or not. I feel like this is a controversy that needs to be settled.
Weird. I'm feeling weird right now. We need to move on.
I honestly, he's consistency. Vince was a man of one half last year. He would absolutely light up a team for one half and then go completely silent the next.
Look for his shot a little bit more.
I think I spent an entire evening, because this is how awesome my Tuesday nights are, digging up first half and second half stats for Edwards, and I think there were like 15 games where more than 70% of his stats came in one half or the other. That's it. That's insane. And that's also, he's a freshman. He wasn't one of those highly touted top 20 freshmen that was expected to contribute right away. And so he was overachieving in that sense. But he's Purdue. I think Purdue needs him more than any other singular player on this team, right? Just like, again, we keep bringing his name up, but just like that 2010 team needed Robbie more than it needed anybody else to show up, night in and night out. I think the part of Etwan, the guaranteed 18 points a night, is going to be AJ this year, and we'll talk about that next. But the guy that kind of makes the engine go, because we don't have a point guard, is going to be Vince Edwards. So we can't afford inconsistency anymore.
Let's talk about this guaranteed 18 a night business.
18's a little much, I know, but
so I think Hammonds' stats, I think he's more of a 12, 13. I think that would be good for him. I think there's going to be a lot. There's going to be enough to go around, but I don't see one player dominating from a point standpoint.
I think I could see AJ getting around 15 a game. I think I could see him like 15 and 8, with like 3 blocks a game. I mean, like 3 blocks and assists a game. Like that's a borderline All-American year, right? I mean, like that's especially for a 4-year player. Old white writers, sports writers, love that kind of story. I think he'll be.
Block stats actually, well, they went down a little bit last year from his sophomore year when he was averaging 3 a year. But
for the second half during Big Ten season, he was up around 13. He was up around 13 points, 7.5 rebounds, I think. I think he sustains that. I mean, like, I'm fairly loudly on record in saying that we don't need the whole motor concern. He dispelled that for half a season, so or for the latest half a season. So I don't think that's a problem anymore.
Then, do you think he's an All-American candidate? Because I don't think so. But
I think he's unanimous. I think he's a unanimous first team Big Ten, and I think he'll be on that honorable mentions for the All-American, like, third team or whatever. Like I think every analyst will know his name by the end of the year and say, hey, that kid you got to watch out for in the tournament, AJ Hammonds. Like I think he'll play that part. I don't know. Andy, what do you think?
I mean, I guess I'm kind of split between the two. I think he's capable of playing at that level, but I also think that his production. I mean, there's a lot of people. I think, obviously Haas is going to be eating to his minutes, and I just don't think that he'll be able to have enough of a resume to justify the team. So I mean, like, this can kind of move on to the next guy, but do you think Haas will take a step back? I don't think Haas has the chance to get the minutes that would mean that he progresses. I think he's either the same guy as last year or a little worse. Next year, I think he's going to, with him and Swanigan starting next to each other, hopefully, if Swanigan comes back, starting next to each other, I think he's going to have a great opportunity to grow, and I think he will. But this year, I actually don't think Haas is going to be too much of a threat to AJ's minutes. I
bet it's 2020 or 25-15. I still don't think Hammonds is a 30-minute plus a night player. And I don't think Swanigan's going to get those extra minutes at the 5. I bet what we saw from a minute split during the latter half of the Big Ten season is what we'll see with Hammonds and Haas this year. I think Painter will want to avoid playing Swanigan at the 5 as much as possible. And so
I honestly don't see why that's such a big thing. Like, honestly, I'm not sure I understand why.
Well, because politically.
Hammond.
No, no,
Well,
no.
no,
In
I
terms of
think
why,
Hammond.
people would want to play Swanigan at the 5. He's not a 5. I don't get it.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were asking why they would want to not play him in the five.
No,
Yeah,
and he can guard 5s because he's huge. He's like he's got a 7'5" wingspan. But I don't know. I don't see him as a 5, and we have 2 better 5s on the roster.
I mean, so that's a really interesting question as far as who takes this step forward and who takes the step back. And it seems like your vote is Haas takes the
Yeah,
step. Is
yeah.
that a skill standpoint or is that a minutes available standpoint?
It might be a combination of both. You need minutes when you're a young player, and as relatively raw as Haas was, and he was very good last year. Don't for what we were expecting, he was very good last year. I just don't think between um, all of the talent we have on the court, I don't think he'll get anything more than, let's say, 15 minutes a game. And I do think Hammonds will see around like 28. So for reference, Davis played 32. Hammonds last year played around 25. So, and that was up during Big Ten season. I think for the entirety of the season, I think AJ is around 28 to 30. And he's lost weight again. He looks slimmer than I've ever seen him. Uh, Swanigan looks really thin. Isaac Haas looks like he found all of that weight, converted it into titanium, and injected it into his body. He looks like Ivan Drago. It's incredible. But the 2 starting bigs look a lot more slim than we were anticipating. So I think that their minutes might surprise. I don't know. That might be one of the things. I'm really high on AJ this year. I don't know.
He has improved each year. Is AJ your pick for biggest step forward, or is that Edwards?
For biggest step forward, it's Edwards. I think Edwards takes a step into like the national conscious of like the national guys that are covering him. Um, they'll start to put him on draft boards and stuff like that. But the best player on the team is AJ Hammonds. I'm not sure it's too close. I think next year the best player on the team is Hammonds, and I think Painter wants Hammonds to be the best player on the team because then it shows it's another sales pitch, right? He can go out to Schneider Herard, just one of the highly ranked recruits, and say, look at what I did for AJ Hammonds. Look at what I've already done for Isaac Haas. Look at what I've done, hopefully, for Biggie Swanigan. Like Painter is the forward whisperer, I guess, but I don't know. What do you think? Who's the front court MVP, and then the guy that's taking the next step for you
I
guys?
think it's Edwards. I think Edwards has all the tools to impact the game. I mean, rebounding, shooting. If his defense takes a little bit step forward, I think that's actually his biggest area of improvement. He could really be a force the same way that, again, to bring his name up again, the same way that Hummel really led those teams, I think Edwards can do the same.
And just looking at in the scrimmages, he had a decisiveness. He was quicker. He made his move. And I mean, it's hard to say if he's actually really more athletic or if he's just playing on instinct instead of actually thinking about what he's doing. And his shot is noticeably quicker. His release, before I think it was a 4-second release, and that was pretty automatic. So I mean, if he's just if he could do everything he does, but just without having to think about it, I think that would just make him that much more of a valuable player.
That's interesting. I did notice that. That's a great point. Like he would almost like you could see the cogs moving, right? Like you could see he was looking like it's like a quarterback moving through his progressions. I hate when people compare across sports, but I just did it. So you could kind of see Vince was saying, step 1, let's go inside. That's not working. Let's roll around this screen. Like he was very labored in his movements. But yeah, at least in the video that I saw of the scrimmage, because I'm not there, he looked a lot better. I mean, like he just looked like a smarter player. and that's saying something, I think. I think that if Smotherman actually redshirts, I do think we'll see Taylor on the floor for stretches like 2 or 3 minute stretches, just energy stretches, or to relieve some foul trouble, or even if you wanted to play Swanigan at the five offensively. Defensively, I think Taylor has that kind of a skill set to be able to take that switch and then just say, yeah, I'll get the five or I'll get the center of the defense. And don't worry about it. I think that's what Big E's worried about. He doesn't want to be expending all of his energy on the defensive end, bodying up against these guys that are as big as him. So I think Taylor might see a little bit of action.
I think he'll get out on the court, but I think it'll be sporadic. I don't think
Yeah.
it'll be a regular 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's definitely fair to say, and maybe you guys agree, that Purdue will go as the front court goes, right? If this team is successful, if the bigs are as good as they look to be, then it could bode very well for Purdue. But I don't. If not, then
I'll
the back is strong enough to make up for that.
I'll kind of put it like this. I think the front court determines the floor of this team, but the wings and the shooting determines the ceiling.
That's fair.
If we have the same thing last year, and this is what Brian said when we had him on, we had shooters that couldn't shoot. I don't know what that means. That means we have players that can't make a 3-pointer. Like
Hey, listen, you gotta make it right. Unless if you can't make your shots, you're not a shooter. Right?
So there's no threat. Like just like Lowe was saying before, like Zach Lowe was saying before, the whole purpose of the modern post game, and that's even in college basketball now. It's even moving into college basketball because of because of all of the new rule changes that have kind of tried to push it into a more fast-paced game. If you can't have shooters, everybody's just going to collapse on the big, and you'll just leave Ray Davis open. If Kendall Stevens is having a cold shooting spell, or Dakota Mathias is having a cold shooting spell, like Dakota did last year, you just leave Dakota open and say, fine, shoot it, but we're not going to let Hammonds beat us. We don't trust that you can make it. And that's when having two post guys on the floor at the same time in Biggie and AJ, or Biggie and Haas, or whatever, that's when it could start getting plotting. So shooting, that's my key. Kendall Stevens needs to be, Kendall Stevens needs to be on those like 3-and-D prospects national lists on CBS Sports or whatever.
No, but you know what? And I think while we're talking about that, I think the keys it's not so much even having Mathias or Kendall hitting their shots, but it's Ray Davis, Edwards, and PJ Thompson.
Yeah.
Because we've never had a team where we've been that deep and had that many threats, and if we could have even the point guard, we've never had a point guard that was reliable behind the three. And I think we talked about this last time we talked about the backcourt, but I think that's going to make all the difference.
I think I'm excited. This is kind of next year, but Carson Edwards looks like that guy, right? I mean, I wish we had him this year, but he could be one of those scoring, shooting threat what's that? Keaton Grant. I love Keaton Grant. That kind of a point guard, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think Painter has ever had this deep of a team. You never have to worry about redshirting somebody like Basil Smotherman. I mean, can you imagine? In 2010, the part of Basil Smotherman was played by Kelsey Barlow, who was the athletic freak wing who just came in and played minutes, and he didn't really know what he was doing. Barlow was the sixth man on that team, and so. And honestly, I'm saying this, and I know it's going to happen now. Even if this team sustains it, I think this team could sustain an injury to one of the key players a lot better than that 2010 team did, just because of the depth. And I think the leadership. I think Ray Davis is the best leader that this program has seen. Period. I'd say.
I agree.
I'd put him above Chris Kramer. I think Ray Davis I don't think we'll see someone like him, and with his weird story for a while, going from a star in high school to end of the bench or near the end of the bench at Purdue to now the undisputed captain.
So I'll throw out Lewis Jackson as my favorite
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
leader
Sure.
that Purdue has had. But I
You're
think
right. That's a good one.
Davis is on that level. I don't know. It's exciting. We got some scrimmages coming up, and it's going to be fun to watch Purdue play basketball.
Hey, a athletic investment that actually pays off.
Who'd have thought, right?
Yeah. All it took was a nasty email.
All it took was a crappy email from her. Anyway.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Well,
This is the positive side.
I'll preview.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Yes, on in the coming weeks. We'll see though.
Absolutely. Subscribe to the podcast. Do all that kind of stuff. We're on iTunes. We're on SoundCloud and all that garbage. So
on Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll have a lot more basketball stuff on the site in the coming weeks, but just stay strong. We'll get through football season.
Cool.
All right.
18 in game.
I mean, like that was the Etuan stat, right? Etuan came into college averaging 18 points a game because he's unbelievable and amazing and the greatest of all time.
Yeah, in a very talented class too.
That ball actually is the only signed thing that I own, and it's that entire team except for Etuan Moore.
Etuan Moore got a shout out on Grantland today from Lowe, I think it was, but it was very much a pat in the back and a stab at the scene. It was something like how he was a very serviceable backup and scary as a starter.
Listen, that's fine. That's fine. You're a better backup than Aaron Brooks. That's fine.
Yeah, he's making that money.
Hummel's not.
Yeah, Hummel's making money.
He went to Europe, but
yeah. But he's making money. He's probably making more money over there than he would be as, the 13th guy on the bench for some shitty team.
So they actually, the Wolves brought over the EuroLeague champion, or MVP or whatever, and that's who kicked off Hummel from the squad. They pulled their qualifying offer when Nemanja Bilijnikov came over or whatever his name is. I don't know.
He wasn't destined for a long NBA career, but
Minnesota was a weird spot for him always. I mean, and that's why Flip legitimately loved having him on the court for some reason, and so that's
just to troll the other players on the team.
Yeah, I mean,
play better or Chase Buttinger, or else I'm gonna put Robbie in front.
Yeah.
Indiana.
I'll play him. I will play him. I promise.
I don't know. New Indiana Pacer, Chase Buttinger.
Yeah, so thrilled about that.
I would rather have Elena Deladon than the WNBA MVP than Chase Buttinger for $5 million on the Pacers.
No argument here.
God, it's just going to be a disaster, but I'm so excited for it. Anyway, all right. I'll see you guys.
Later.
See you guys.